Welcome to this webinar, all of you. I'm sure those of you who are present here, some would be taking the exam in a very short time. Some of you might still be a long way to go, and some of you might have just started your preparations. All right. So good evening, Renju, Ashwin, Ryan. Very warm welcome to all of you. And I think I can see still people are joining. So let me just carry on with so I am going to be the host for the session. I am Sunita and I am the verbal head at GMAT Quiz. I have been teaching for quite some time now. Teaching is like, so I'm fortunate that my work is my passion. I have been tutoring students in different areas of the verbal section for quite a number of years now. So, guys, I'm going to start off with a kind of small question to all of you. How many of y'all think that, the RC section, getting the RC, the questions in the RC, getting the RC questions is more important than getting the other questions correct? I mean, that's not supposed to sound the way it is sounding. But then how many of you believe that it is very, very important to, get those RC questions correct? How many of you believe that? Good evening, Navneet. Yes, you can just give me your short answers in the chat box, guys. How many of y'all kind of believe that RC questions are really very important? And how many of y'all believe, okay, they are as important as the other questions? Okay, so Madhukar says as important as the others. All right. Ryan says very important. What about okay. Ashwin says infinitely important. Okay, Ashwin, that's a nice way of putting it. How about the others? Yes, guys, let's have a very interactive session this evening. Hola, Alex, good to see you. Good morning. So Renju says RCs are very important. Navneet says they're important as they can boost the score. Mithul says as important. So I'm just going to show you a small, so there's this small experimental thing that we did a while back, and we have also researched quite a bit over a period of time to arrive at the conclusion that I'm going to show you next. All right. So let me just quickly continue with this. Now, if you try to understand the importance of facing the RC questions on GMAT, so like all the questions are very important, guys. We all know that. But RC questions have a special, or let's say a unique thing about them. All right. So what is that unique thing we're going to discuss? Now, we all know that about 3 to 4 passages can appear on average on any student's exam. All right. And about 12 to 15 questions, the numbers would vary, right? Which means just about 1/3 or a little more of the total questions on the GMAT verbal section would come from the RC area, right? Okay, all right. So what does this mean? Now, in the in the context that GMAT is an adaptive test, getting RC questions correct, it's very, very important because it comes in consecutive numbers. All right. And if you get 3 or 4 RC questions wrong, it's really going to be bad. I mean, any consecutive mistakes are going to be penalized heavily. The thing with other questions is they are based on different stimulus. For example, if you have 4 consecutive CR questions, then each CR question will have its own stimulus, and you will be reading each stimulus separately and solving the questions separately. But in case of an RC, you cannot, if you misunderstand the RC, the entire passage, you're going to end up getting all 4 questions incorrect. All right. So I'm going to give you a simple example. And as I said, this is not just an example. This has been researched and identified and proved. Okay. Let's say we have 3 students. Okay. You have student A who gets all the SC questions incorrect, let's say, hypothetically. But then, as I said, we've kind of had our experts test this out. So all SC questions are incorrect and the rest of the questions are correct, which means all the CR is correct and all the RC is correct. Then you have student B who gets all the CR incorrect, but all the RC and the SC correct. And then you have student C who gets all the RC incorrect, but all the CR and SC correct. Now, can you tell me what their scores will be like? You can answer me in the chat boxes, guys. Miss, what will be the relationship between the scores of these three students? Will they have the same score? Where their scores or will their scores be very, very close, or will their scores be okay? Ryan says student C score will be the worst. What about the others? What do you think? We are trying to establish the importance of RC, guys. Stay tuned because we are really going to have a smashing session. There are some very, very important methodology that we're going to talk about. If you have been, really suffering from a very bad score in the RCs repetitively, not getting anywhere, no improvement, trust me, this session is going to be the session for you. All right. So let me see. Okay, Ryan says, no, let's just make it. So Ryan says, student C is going to get the worst score. Yes, Ryan. Shivang says CBA. So Shivang, I assume you're telling me C is going to get more than B. I mean, more than, sorry, more than B. And okay, so I got it. Great, Shivang. Ashwin, low in C. Karambir says RC. Okay. Navneet says A will get about 30 to 33. B will get 30 to 33, but C will get 27 to 30. Good, good. Madhukar says A and B will get the same. C is going to get the worst. C gets the least score, says Renju. Samyak, Manikandan, Mithul. All of you have got it right. Absolutely. Because C, okay, because RCs come in consecutive numbers. So let's say if you got 3 RCs in your test, and if you get all RCs incorrect, that means at different junctures in the test, you're getting 4 questions or 5 questions incorrect at a stretch. Okay, that's really going to be bad. So here you can see, and as you guys, all of you said, student C is going to really, really be hit hard. All right. Okay, so the thing is, what does this tell us? What does this tell us? What can we infer from this? We can infer that since student C is scoring less than student A and B, it clearly implies RC affects the score more. And the reason is because RCs come consecutively, and if you end up getting consecutive questions incorrect, it heavily affects your score. All right. So the bottom line is you make mistakes in RCs, especially in the beginning. All right, it can really hurt your score a lot. So this was all about establishing the importance of RC for those of you out here there who have just started your preparation and who believe RC questions. You believe that okay, it's RC. What's the big deal? We'll take it up later. The problem is not RC is a big deal or a small deal. The problem is the format of the GMAT questions. Okay, getting those RC questions incorrect consecutively is really going to be bad. All right, so with that, let me now ask you a very important question, guys. What is it about RCs that scares you so much? Let me have your opinion. Let me hear it from you, because I'm going to tackle each of those fears today. What is it about RCs that really scares you so much? You know, what is that factor about RCs which you really, you're like, oh my God, this is RC. Oh my God, this is RC. You do this. Let's hear it from you. Ryan says, focus on difficult scientific passages. Okay, that's the problem. Doris says, can't study for it easily. It takes long-term reading ability. Doris, we will talk about that later on also. But let me tell you right away, you really do not need to be an avid reader to do well on GMAT RCs. And I promise you that. You don't need to be an avid reader by habit in order to read well on the GMAT RCs, for the simple reason that there is a method to it and we can all adapt to that method. So Ashwin says inference questions are bother him. Renju says complex ideas. Margaret says main point question. Margaret, today we will main point questions. Margaret, the issue is, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, the answer to main point questions is not written in any one place. Okay, it's not written in any one place, and therefore it's very difficult to go back to the passage and identify that main point answer. So the trick lies in how you read the passage, and we are really going to talk about it today. I'm sure after today you're not going to face the same kind of problem again, Margaret. Varika says, getting into the author's shoes. Wonderful, Varika. It is difficult but not impossible, and I'll talk to you about how to get into the author's shoes. Manikandan says, complex passages that takes time to comprehend. Again, we will be looking at that. Ravi says the languages. So probably, Ravi, what you mean is the convoluted, indirect, roundabout language, the long sentences, and probably some of the difficult words. Shashank says inferential questions. Madhukar says the construct is usually extremely difficult. Madhukar, I kind of understand that. And one of the motives, one of the kinds of questions that you get is, which of the following, what is the function of, say, paragraph 2 in the organization of the passage? In that case, you really have to understand the construction carefully, correctly. So we will talk about how to understand that construction right from the beginning. Navneet says he finds the RCs hard to understand, so you get the answers wrong. Well, perhaps, Navneet, you're not reading it the right way. Shivang says sometimes they're really long and technical. Yes, Shivang, I can understand that. But then again, the answer is the same to all these problems. Shivam says able to understand passage, but when it comes to eliminating options, options seem the same. Okay, Shubham. Today we are also going to talk about how to eliminate very close options. Okay, so Shashank also says what author would do. Yes, Shashank, that is a very important area. About 70% plus questions are based on the author's point of view. Marianne, can you hear me now? I think others can hear me, guys. So let me just reply to Marianne in case she can't hear me. Just a minute. Okay, Marianne, that should work for you. Long sentences, says Shashank. Marianne, I'm talking right now. You can log in just. Madhukar says verbiage. Where do they borrow these words from? Madhukar, they borrow it from English language, unfortunately. But I'll also talk about that. GMAT is not really a test of vocabulary. So even if there are difficult words or unknown words in the passage, there is enough context given in the passage for you to recognize the meaning of that word. And in our course, we have dealt with this issue also. Pallavi says understanding the author's point of view. So you're welcome, Marianne. So I think Vishrut says inference questions. So I think most of you have common issues. Okay, good. So let me now move to the fear factors. Unfamiliar genre, as some of you said, that science passage or humanities passage, you are not able to remember what you read in the passage. The answer choices are closed, very time consuming. All these you kind of set up a mental block, guys. I'm sure you do. Okay, and that mental block is counterproductive, really, really counterproductive. Okay, so what to do now? As I said earlier, the trick lies in reading the passage. So in my experience, there are various ways of in which students read passages. Okay, so some of you just scan and skim through the passage and then you come back for the answer while answering the questions. You come back to the passage. Or some of you might be reading the first and the last line and then you might skim through the rest of the passage. Some of you might be concentrating on the first and last line of each paragraph and then moving to the questions after skimming through the passage. Some of you might actually be looking at the question first and then searching for the answer and so on. Okay. So let me ask you guys. No, I'll just set up a poll here. Just give me a moment. Okay. So honestly, guys, answer, and I want a very honest answer from all of you. Which of these methods resemble the closest method that you follow? Yes. Which of these four, okay, resembles the method that you follow most closely? All right. And be honest, because today we're going to establish what works. Okay. Today we are going to establish what works. So Doris says none of the above. Perhaps, Doris, it could be a mixture of these, or you can just share how you read the passage in the chat box itself. But then, so my polls, I'm just going to end the poll, guys. I want all of you to just put it in there so that we all know, that we are, so that it becomes a common factor. We can recognize what could be the mistake that most of us are making. So Karambir also does not follow any of these. Fine, Mitul, Karambir, Doris, I would love to hear from you what method you follow. Okay. So let me see, I'm going to end the poll. Just I'm ending the poll. Here it is. Okay. So 63% of you, that's a huge chunk. You just scan and skim through the passage quickly, and then you return to the passage while answering the questions. Okay. None of you follow the second method. Good for you. And 21% of you follows method C, like you kind of concentrate on the beginning and ending of each paragraph, and then you kind of just move through the rest of the passage and then go to the questions. Another 15% of you first read the questions. Now, out of all of you, how many of y'all are confident? Okay, just a yes or no will do. How many of y'all are confident when you are answering your questions? I'm not asking about you getting them correct or incorrect. How many of you are confident? Okay, so all of you, I've got that 100% there. Whatever method you're following, you're confident. All of you are confident. Okay, no, I'm getting a difference. All right. So while that poll goes on, let me look at what Navneet has, some of you have shared. Okay. Because it's going to be interesting. Karambi says he reads the whole passage and makes notes. But Karambi, do you refer to those notes while answering the questions online? Is the question. Notes, do they really come in handy? I'm not against making notes, but then would you have the time to refer to the notes again in the exam? Jack says very close answer choices. I understand most of the passages. Ryan reads each sentence of the passage. Navneet reads the entire passage to understand it completely and then moves to the question, but it also takes so much time. Navneet, it would be interesting to know what kind of accuracy you get. Doris says she reads the passage thoroughly, segment by segment, conscious of the time, and you do return while answering the question, but you know exactly where it is. Okay, yes, Doris. Today we're going to learn an even better. I mean, definitely the method follows what you follow most of the time. Mithul says he mostly reads the passage in detail about 4 to 5 minutes, and then you answer the questions, and it becomes easier and faster. Returning to passages needed for some questions, especially detailed questions. Okay, that's interesting. Ashwin says it's difficult not to return to the passage. I understand. So let's look at the polls here. Okay, so based on the various methods that you follow, only 36% of you are confident while answering the question. About 64% of you are not. And that is not surprising, guys. Okay. GMAT passages aren't the kind of passages that you can just scan and understand. Half the time, the answers are very, very indirect. The words used in the answer choices are very, very different. And therefore, it becomes very difficult to eliminate if you haven't understood the passage correctly. Okay. So here's what I'm going to do, guys. I'm going to talk to you about how you should read the passage. We're going to talk about the methods. So obviously these don't work, and they don't work. What happens is, I'm sure you can kind of, whether you identify with this or not, just tell me. I mean, given that most of you follow one or the other of these methods, okay, I'm sure you find yourself rereading portions of the passage again and again for different questions. Okay, which means you spend time reading the passage once, then you go to the questions, and then you go back to the passage and reread portions, which means you're actually spending more time on reading. And as you have given me, you're not very confident. If you're not confident, it is also going to affect your SC and CR scores. Once you finish the RC passages, you will keep thinking whether you did well or not, and you keep being worried about it. Okay, so the reason why you don't get that accuracy following these methods, you're not confident, is because you did not have the precise understanding of the passage. Now, one thing, let me straight away, that it's a disclaimer about the I'm going to discuss a method with you right away, but about the time taken by that method, just hold on to your questions. I'm going to answer that once I finish discussing the method. Okay, I'm going to talk about the time factor also. So hold on to that particular question. So because you don't have a precise understanding of the passage, you choose the incorrect answer. Okay. And the solution to this is only one. You have to understand the passage properly. Okay. In fact, I'm going to give you a very short passage with one question. And I'm going to give you about roughly 2.5 minutes to solve that one question. It's a really short passage. And I want you to kind of make short mental summaries if you want to write it down, your understanding of the passage. Later on, when we look at that passage, using my method, the involved and evolved reading, then we want to compare notes. You really want to compare notes and see the difference between your understanding following your method and following the involved reading method. Okay. So this passage, right now I want you to attempt this passage using your own methods, guys. All of you, I want you guys to use your own methods. Okay. Don't worry about the method being right or wrong. Right now we are trying to establish what works. So we want you to be honest and we want you to use your own method. So here comes the passage and here's the question. I'm going to give you exactly 2.5 minutes. Okay. That's what, or maybe 3 minutes at the most. So go ahead, guys. I'm just going to mute myself while you answer that question. Another 45 seconds, guys. Okay, I'm going to quickly give a countdown of 5 and end the poll. So those of you who are ready with your answers but have not put in the polls, please do so. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now. All right, so 51% of you have marked choice A as the correct choice. And the next contender is choice B, that's 37% of you there. Just a small 3% for C and a 7% for E. Okay, guys, how did you find the passage? How was the passage? It's very short, actually. So to get, it's not like, it's one of the shortest passages, but then we are trying to just establish a certain issue here. It's a part of the complete passage. Yes, guys, how did you find the passage? You can answer me in the chat boxes. Okay, so let's see the answers. Pallavi found it very tough. Doris found it easy to moderate. Ryan found it decent. Not too hard, not too easy. Sashank found it ideal. So Madhukar says relatively easier than usual GMAT ones. Well, it is supposed to help you establish a certain understanding. So kind of we've used a slightly easier passage. But then, of course, this is not a 700 level passage. It's almost like about 650 plus level. Medium hard, says Navneet. It was annoying, says Mithul. Okay, Mithul, why? Shashank says not too easy, not too difficult. Chandrapriya, quite okay. Shivang says technically difficult. Varika says a little confusing. Jack says close choices. Sanket says moderate level. Well, the issue is, the funny part of the difficulty level of a passage is it's relative. So, what I can understand from your replies, guys, is that some of you found it difficult, some of you did not. Okay. But the crux of the matter is those of you who found it easy, whether you got the answer correct with 100% confidence or not is the question. And today, the purpose is not to be able to solve a passage, but the purpose is to learn how to solve it best, how to solve every kind of difficulty level of passage, with the highest accuracy. Okay, so I've been talking a lot about method and this and that. Now, when you look at this snippet, I'm sure a lot of you would have been thrown off by the usage of the word induction, deduction, generalization. We normally don't use these words. So they kind of cause us to panic often. Okay. And once you panic, what happens is, like, even before you reading that passage, you kind of set up a mental block. It's like, it's an exam and you've read the first sentence of the passage and you're in a panic, and imagine what you're going to do to the rest of the passage. So you're not going to, this is something that you'll have to tackle, and you'll be able to tackle once you're armed with the right method. You would know that, okay, what induction, deduction, I'll be able to handle it all. Okay. So what you need is a cool head, okay, and an approach that'll tell you, okay, I'm going to get a decent level of understanding of this passage. I'm going to be able to answer the questions with the help of that. Okay. So I'm going to talk about involved and evolved reading now, guys. This is something that you may know of in bits and parts, but you do not really have a structure to do this. We all talk about, yes, I'm going to apply the meaning based approach, I'm going to apply the meaning, but if I go by the reading that you give, 63% of you mark that you just skim through the passage. It's not possible to really understand the meaning of what the author is written. So when we are going to talk about involved and involved reading, what is it? Okay, when you are reading in this manner, in the involved and evolved reading, what is happening is you're getting involved with the passage and you are evolving your understanding of the passage. Both things are very, very important. Okay. The first is necessary for the second, and the second is necessary for getting those answers correct. All right, let's talk about what this is. So this means you think like the author. Now, if I remember, one of you had said that it is very difficult to get into the shoes of the author. So we're going to talk about how to get into the shoes of the author. You have to think like the author and you have to understand the author's point of view, guys. Okay. As I said earlier, more than 70% of the questions, they test the author's point of view, author's opinion. So you need to understand this right from line one. Now, how to do this? How to do this? How to get involved? What you need to do is you need to read each sentence by breaking the sentence into small parts. Okay. See, if you take a huge bite of something, your mouth will be full and you will have really difficulty in chewing that stuff, and your stomach will find it difficult to digest it easily. Okay. You won't be able to bite all the stuff that you have put in your mouth. Some of it you will just swallow, you'll not eat it. So the same thing here. You cannot swallow the entire sentence in one go and hope to digest it properly. So the idea is you break the sentence into sizable chunks. Okay, we teach you where to break, how to break. We teach you in that in our skill builder. We have almost a 10-hour module of building skill building. Okay, for reading. So earlier, I think one of you was saying that you are not an avid reader. This is the part where you really get trained how to read. Okay, so you break a sentence into small parts and you derive the meaning of that small part. Okay, in this manner, you understand the entire sentence. Okay, so the meaning of a single sentence is derived by breaking the sentence into small parts, understanding the meaning of each part, joining the meanings of the different parts, and arriving at the consolidated meaning of that sentence. Thereafter, for every next sentence, for every subsequent sentence, what you do is you keep relating back to the previous sentence. You keep asking yourself, okay, why has the author stated sentence B after sentence A? What is the relationship between A and B? And you do this really quickly. I'm going to demonstrate how to do this. This is the most important part of involved and evolved reading, guys. Usually we just read all the sentences one by one. I'm sure if you ask yourself, the answer will be that you do not relate back each sentence to the previous sentence. Okay, you will find that you don't. All right. So this relating back is, you're trying to understand what the author is trying to tell us sentence by sentence. We are kind of drawing a sort of, you can say, algorithm to understand a flow chart, to understand how the author is developing the idea. What helps you in understanding or relating back the sentences, and these are very important, transition words and conjunctions. Okay, they are very, very, very important. We have a whole unit dedicated to understanding these. They help us relate back the meaning. Once you have added up all the sentences and derived the meaning, you quickly summarize the paragraph. I'm going to show you how to do this later on. Okay, the summary really helps. Let's say you have 3 paragraphs. Then if you mentally summarize each para, you will very easily be able to identify the main point. Okay, one of you was asking about the main point. Similarly, if you have to answer questions like, what is the function of this paragraph? Then also you will be able to identify the function of that paragraph if you have summarized that paragraph mentally. You have questions like, what is the organization of the passage? Then you will be able to set the flow of ideas if you have been able to summarize the paragraph. So a lot of advantages there for the different kinds of questions that you will be facing. So we're going to talk about how to relate back, how to break and read and how to relate back. So if you have any questions, let me just return to the chat box once. And no, I cannot see. Okay, so let me see. I have some answers here. Samyak says the passage was comparatively easy to understand but difficult to solve. That's a very good observation, Samyak. And that is what GMAT does. Sometimes the passage is deceptively simple, but the questions are not. I have another follow-up question on that passage, by the way. Just hold on to that. Okay. Yes, Navang, I'm just going to discuss the answer. So just hold on for a bit. Ketan says, good for warm-up. Welcome, Ketan. Yes, thank you. Madhukar says, if the answer is A, yes, I was confident. Okay. Jack says, choice A is for empirical method only. Okay, let's see. Madhukar says he agrees with Jack. Okay, Samyak says, so let's see now, guys. Okay. So I'm going to demonstrate involved and evolved reading, guys, and you will automatically be able to understand the answer. But let's first understand this. Suppose you have these 2 sentences. Now I'm going to demonstrate something, so just hold on to the thoughts and concentrate on the method that I'm going to demonstrate. This is a very easy example that I've taken to show you how to relate back, how to read. Okay, here goes. In the last decade, okay, so we are talking about a certain time period, there has been a significant decrease in coffee consumption. Okay, so this first sentence is talking about a past time period, and a huge decrease was there in the consumption of coffee. Okay, that means the people were consuming less and less coffee. Okay, all right. So that's a simple sentence. Fine. Next, during this same time, okay, I stop here and I say which time. Okay, in same time, that is in the same last decade, there has been increasing publicity. Okay, so here we have another event that took place along with that significant decrease in coffee consumption. There was an increasing publicity. Let's see about what? About the adverse, that is harmful long-term effects on health of the caffeine in coffee. So this long sentence is basically telling me that in the same time when there was a decrease in coffee consumption, there was also a lot of publicity going on about the bad effects of caffeine in coffee. Okay. Now, if I were to ask you to relate back the second sentence to the first sentence, you ask yourself, okay, why has the author stated the second sentence? You can give me your answers in the chat box, guys. Why has the author stated, probably stated the second sentence. What do you think the author is trying to tell us? What is the idea that the author is trying to develop? So Ryan, in what way does the author want to explain the observation? Ambarish, good. Ambarish says the author wants to display causation. Okay, so what's the cause and what's the effect? Shashank says possible reason for the decrease in coffee. Great. Barika says giving the reason for decline in coffee consumption. Fatima says, so Fatima, ask yourself, what would the conflicting events establish? What would the conflicting events mean? Because this is what is very important. This is what is the relating back that result that we are going to get. So Mithul says explains the reason for reduction, leading into more of his main point. Yes, Doris, that's the way we develop the understanding of the author's intention. Madhukar says cause effect. Manikandan says reason the trend stated. Navneet says trying to give additional info about the observation. Again, Navneet, ask yourself, why is the author giving this information? Why is the author talking about increasing publicity, about the harmful effects of coffee and talking about decrease in coffee consumption at the same time? It's a very simple thing. Okay. Yes, Arunav, you're correct. Arsh says both. So both are a premise and the author is building towards a conclusion. Sanket says cause and effect. So absolutely. So you see, if you ask the right questions, you're going to get the answers. If you don't, you won't. So here, the author is trying to draw correlation between two sentences. And the correlation is, probably the second one is trying to set the cause behind the first one. Okay. Now, let's say if you had this sentence following the first two sentences. However, which is a contradictory word, there has been an increase in the consumption of tea. Okay, so the author here now is talking about increase in the consumption of another beverage, that is tea, which also contains similar quantities of caffeine. Okay, so in the third sentence, the author is saying there is this beverage tea, which also has caffeine, but the consumption of tea has increased. Okay, now can you tell me what the author is trying to say? Come on, try, guys. After the third sentence, what do you think the author is saying? So see, sentence by sentence, by relating back, we are drawing a map. And this you will practice and you will perfect this skill. Yes? So now what do you think the author is trying to tell us? So Ryan says alternate driver, but then what, Ryan? Be more explicit, please. Madhukar says caffeine may or may not be the reason. So the author is casting a doubt on Madhukar, is it caffeine or is it the publicity that you're talking about? Manikandan says introducing a paradox. Wonderful, Manikandan. Both the beverages contain caffeine, but one is increasing, the other is decreasing. Barika says negating the reasoning in the second sentence. Wonderful. Okay, yes, the audience may not be aware that tea has caffeine. Mithul says, in spite of adverse effects, increase in tea consumption. Yes, why? Ambarish says, rise in tea leads to decrease in consumption of coffee. Well, see, Ambarish, that reasoning is not quite correct. The reason being, um, the rise in tea, the decrease in coffee, if you look at the second sentence, kind of is because of the publicity. Okay. And then the third sentence is that there is an increase in the consumption of tea. So, well, the decrease in coffee could have been because of increase in tea, but not necessarily. Okay. So, all right. Incomplete conclusion, says Navang. Yes. Shivani says maybe there was some other reason for the decrease of coffee. Good, good, good. See, if you ask questions, you will get certain answers and you will build the idea flow. Sanket says contradiction to the cause and effect. So, good. Let's see. So, clearly, by stating that third sentence, the author is trying to tell us that the reason for decrease may not be publicity, but something. Now, imagine the third sentence is not there. Okay, it's not there. You have this instead. Now, the sales of tea. Okay, now the author is talking about sales of tea, which also contains similar amounts of caffeine, have also gone down. So here clearly the author is saying that the reason might be publicity. Okay, because another caffeine containing beverage also saw a decline in consumption, that is sales. Okay, so clearly when we are relating back the different pieces of information, we are drawing a map of the passage, and this is really going to come handy when you're answering all questions, especially the main point, especially the ones based on summaries. So you're not reading the sentences in isolation. Okay, you are reading the sentences by connecting them and evolving your understanding of the passage. It's a very, very simple process. Did you understand the process, guys? Let me bring up a poll for it. Hold on to your guns. So I'm just going to bring up a poll. How did you find this method? In fact, yes, answer that question. How did you find it? How did you like it? I'm sure a lot of you don't do this. So all of you like that kind of, I was preempting that answer and I was forcing you to answer that you like it. Okay, let me ask another question actually. How many of you all actually follow this method, and be very honest? How many of you all actually do this for every sentence in the passage? Honestly, guys, how many of you all really do this? 63% of you told me that you just skim and scan the lines. So definitely you cannot do this relating if you're just scanning and skimming the lines. I've got 100% answer on that, guys. Please be honest. I would really appreciate the honesty. I already know that most of you don't do this. I am currently tutoring students from all 5 continents, more than about 30 countries, and I've seen a universal tendency not to relate sentences and meanings. In the hurry, in the panic, in the, you know, the timer is ticking and on. Okay, so about 60% of you say that you do, and 30% of you roughly say you don't. So Varika is being honest. She says that never during the mocks, timer puts a lot of pressure. Yes, Varika. But once you practice it this way, you will become really fast at it. Okay, you will really become fast at this. So you don't have to phrase it exactly aloud like this, but in your mind, you have to do it very quickly, Shivani. You have to do so the paraphrasing, more than the paraphrasing, you just have to quickly understand what each of the sentences mean. Okay. Ravali says she does it sometimes. Well, just make it a habit if you really want to score well on the RCS, Ravali. All right. Okay. So now I'm going to do this for the passage that I gave you. And I want you guys to note very carefully whether your understanding was the same as what we are going to draw now, what we are going to derive now. Okay. Let's see. To put things simply, okay, the author is going to explain something most likely in simple words. Induction emphasizes the individual. Okay, so the author is talking about a process called induction, and induction is all about the individual. It stresses on the individual. Okay, I don't know what is induction, but whatever it is, okay, it emphasizes on the individual. Whereas, okay, so whereas here is a transition word. Therefore, I know the author is going to draw up a contrast instinctively. Deduction, so here I have another term, begins with generalization. Okay, so straight away in my mind, induction is about individual, single. Okay, deduction is about generalization, many. All right, let's see why the author is drawing this contrast. Science largely began with a focus on deduction. Okay, now the author is telling us how deduction came into the picture. Science began by focusing on generalization. And at this point of time, I kind of think to myself, author is talking about how science began, with deduction. So maybe we're going to talk about the development of deduction and induction, or maybe later on something else was used or something like that. Let's see. So science began with deduction, trying to find universal laws and hoping to explain as much about the world as possible. Now, this is extra information, okay? This line between brackets, and you can kind of ignore. What you need to remember is science, began with focus on deduction. So deduction was favored in the 19th century. So now Right from the beginning of science, we're talking about now 19th century, so we're going down the timeline. Generalizations, in other words, means deduction. Reached a pinnacle, I don't know the meaning of pinnacle, let's say, reached overuse. So earlier deduction was the focus, then it began to be overused, particularly for explaining human characteristic. Okay, while now here we have another contrasting word, or maybe it could also be about the time factor. Let's see. While deduction became disfavored. Okay, so here we have deduction disfavored. All right, why? Those missteps. Which missteps? The only thing mentioned is overuse. So deduction was not used much later on because of too much of use of deduction. And what happened? Induction rose to favor. Okay, so now people started using induction more and more, or science started using induction more and more. On the heels of, now on the heels of means because of, followed by more quantitative techniques for describing individual objects of study. Okay, so this passage, this paragraph is basically telling me about two terms, induction and deduction. It's telling me what induction stresses on and what deduction stresses on. It's telling me how too much of deduction was used and how induction became popular. I'm just going to do this roundup before I move to the second paragraph. All right. So if I had to draw up a one-line summary, it would be the author talks about two terms and shows how one term gained favor over the other. Honestly, guys, look at this and share with me how many of y'all, okay, drew the exact understanding. I'm talking about exact. Be honest. How many of y'all drew the exact understanding? How many of y'all would have given me the same summary in the same words, literally? Because you see, in the hurry that we read, based on the various methods that we use, guys, and let's be honest here, we all use different methods, we come up with different kinds of interpretations. And because we come up with different interpretations, we land up choosing the wrong answers, or at least we're not confident of the answers. Now, would you agree with me that this method gives you a very detailed understanding, and then you don't, I mean, if you had this kind of understanding, okay, okay, let me bring up another poll. So there's a 50-50 there about how many of y'all read this way. If you had this kind of understanding of the passage that we just had, okay, would you need to go back to the passage? Would you need to go back to the passage and waste time? Would you so the answer, I think there's some confusion about the question, so let me reframe my question, guys. Just hold on, let me reframe my question. If you had this kind of understanding and you had to answer the question, would you need to go back to the passage again and again? This kind of understanding for the entire passage? Yes, I thought so. You wouldn't, right? Good. Let me see what everybody's saying. So Navneet, so this is the answer to how many of you all followed the same method. Navneet said we could do it, but not in the first read. That's the point, Navneet. We don't want you to give that second read and waste time. In the first reading itself, you read like this, so that although you take a little more time than reading quickly, you have a perfect understanding and you don't need to come back and reread it. Okay. Ryan says he does this, but spends a lot of time rereading. So Ryan, then you're not doing it right. You'll have to practice doing this. If you read it exactly like this, you won't have to come back and read it. That's the whole point. Involved in evolved reading is so that you don't have to reread. Okay. So Sashank, yes, on detailed questions, that also I think you would just have to come back to confirm your answer choice between two, but not for all the answer choices, I'm sure. So we're going to read the same way for the second paragraph before we discuss the answer to the first question and I give you the second question. Okay, so this is a more meatier paragraph. And right at the beginning, the author talks about the problem of induction. Okay, so I know that this paragraph is more or less going to be dedicated to some problem being faced by induction. So deduction was overused, and that is why induction came into favor, but induction has problems. Okay, let's see. You're connecting the two paragraphs, okay? The problem of induction is the impossibility of observing every individual case. Okay, so let's say if we have 1,000 cases, let's say for example, the problem of induction is you cannot observe each and every case. In other words, okay, so in other words is going to give me more explanation behind this sentence. There is always uncertainty about what hasn't been directly observed. Okay, so in my mind, I think, okay, if there are 1,000 cases, maybe they can observe just 600 or 700 or 800 are observed, okay, individually, but the others are not observed. Okay, and what this sentence, the second sentence is saying is that, okay, uh, doubt about the 200, doubt about the 200. Okay, there is always uncertainty about what hasn't been observed, and it is impossible to observe everything. So the author is talking about induction, which is all about uh, emphasis on the individual. Unfortunately, you cannot study every individual case. You can only study some or a certain number or whatever. And the ones that you cannot, there is doubt that remains about those. Clear? So the author here is going to draw a conclusion. The author's opinion is to help fill the gaps between observations. That means the gap on these 200 questions, okay? To fill the gap, we make generalizations that are based on what has been observed so far. So on these 800, okay, generalization are made. The generalization are made to fill the gap of the ones that you haven't observed. In modern science, these generalizations, okay, or predictive guides. So these generalizations that are made, these are known as predictive guides. All right. They take the form of scientific models. So these predictive guides become scientific models. Okay. So basically, we are saying scientific models are based on the generalizations of the observations made. Okay. You make certain number of observations, you generalize, you prepare a scientific model. Is that clear? Can you see? Did you have this understanding? Ask yourself. Then we are talking about there are different types of models, but one of the most popular is the empirical model. Okay, defining a model as empirical. So now the author is talking about what could you mean by empirical model. Emphasizes the fact that it means the empirical model is built from observed data. So we have the scientific models which are built from observed data. Clear? The purpose of the model is to then help the researcher understand system dynamics and make predictions. So these scientific models help to make predictions. Okay, but the application of the model, that is the generalization to unknown situation, is deduction. That means we come full circle. We start with induction, we start here, and we end at deduction. Okay, that's interesting. So summary of the paragraph. What is the problem with induction? Okay, the passage talks about that. Cannot observe every case. So conclusion must be drawn about the area even if all cases are not considered. Thus, always the feeling of uncertainty. Okay. So to cover gap left by unstudied cases, generalizations are made, and the generalizations produce models that are applied to make deductions. Again, my question, guys, and I'm sure I want you to again be very honest. Okay, let me just put up a poll and ask you this. How many of you all had this understanding, this precise understanding? Let me put it this way. Once you understand it this way, you'll never really need to go back to the passage. Okay, how many of you all had this precise understanding? Be honest, because it's not an easy read and it would have been difficult to get this understanding. Okay, so nearly 40% of you, it's about a 50-50 or roughly. I'm going to end the poll. Okay, guys. So it's about a 50-40, 55-45 kind of thing, as you can see. I want you to use this method, guys, for the rest of the evening. When we have another passage coming up, I want you to use this deliberatively and see what difference it makes to your understanding. Only when you compare the two methods, use the two methods, you've already been using your own method. You need to use this method to see how it impacts your score, how it impacts your understanding. And I can vouch for it that it will. So what we have from the second paragraph is, paragraph talks about the problem with the process of induction and how induction helps to develop models used for deduction. So what is the flow of the passage, flow of the ideas? Author first introduces two terms. Then the author talks about how one gained favor over the other. Then the author describes the process of induction, and he talks or she talks about its problems and its predictive models for deduction. Okay, so now we are going to discuss this question. Now, there's something that I'd like you guys to do. I'm going to bring up the poll for this question again. Okay. In the first case, I already have the data on who marked which answer. How many of you all marked which answer? So I don't know individually who has marked what. I'm going to bring up the poll again for this in the light of what we have understood. And if you want, you can change your answers. Go ahead, guys. I want to see whether this understanding has helped you in changing your answer to the correct one, and so on and so forth. So I'm just going to count at 10. 10, 9, 1, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay. So earlier I had a 60, I had a huge percentage for A. All right, almost about a 63% of you had marked A as the correct answer. And now I have 33% of you. I have a, okay, let me just see. The polls are still changing. Okay, so now what has happened is I've just got so earlier I had a smaller percentage for A. Now it seems that a lot of you have changed from B to A. That's interesting. Okay, let's see. So here goes, guys. Now here's choice A. Okay, so the question was, let me look at the question. According to the passage, the scientific models are developed on the basis of commonality. So commonality means, I can call it generalization. Obviously, commonality is generalization. Observed in multiple individual instances, yes. These would be the many unobserved cases, right? Okay. So scientific models are developed based on generalization, and the generalization is based on many unobserved cases. Yes, this seems to be what we understood, right? If you go back, guys, to our understanding of the passage, see, okay, the scientific models, how are they made? The scientific models are made, if you refer to this red portion, scientific models are made on the generalizations made on observed data, the common data, and then the gaps are filled in. So with that understanding, if we see, then choice A is correct. Refer to these lines, guys. Okay, we are saying that defining a model as empirical means it is built from observed data. So this works with this part, multiple individual instances. Okay, and then we are saying that the application of the model to unknown situation is deduction. Let us also point out another part, guys. Data is collected, which is often used to build models. Okay, then we are told that we make generalizations. Okay, that are based on what has been observed. So clearly the starting point is observation. Generalization would be based on common factors on the observation, right? And on the basis of that, these observations take the form of predictive guides. So generalization would become general principles or models to be used as guides for prediction. That is why choice A is correct. So are all of you clear, guys? Are all of you clear why A is correct? Have you understood why A is correct? Great. Thank you. Let me quickly move to the next question so that I can, next choice. This was the next most popular choice, and let's see where it went wrong. Scientific models are built on the basis of generalization. Now, if you look at this part, so we are saying scientific models are built on the basis of generalization. This is correct. Absolutely correct. It's almost same as what we said in the first half. So this part is the truth, okay, as per the passage. Generalizations that are a result of prediction. This is not mentioned in the passage. The generalization is used to make predictions. Okay, I mean, look at it this way. Generalization is not the result. It is not the outcome of prediction. Okay, predictions are the outcome of generalization. Predictions are made on the generalizations which become the models. Okay, and that is why this choice is totally a distortion. So you have half truth here, and this part is a distortion, absolute distortion, the overall part. So therefore choice B is incorrect, guys. Can you see this? A lot of you had marked B. Those of you who marked B, are you clear why B cannot be the answer? Renju, are you clear now why B is not the answer? Half of B is correct, that scientific models are based on generalization. But generalization is not the result of prediction. You use the generalization to make a prediction. Let's say dark clouds bring rain is a generalization. Okay, you have observed hundreds of, you have seen on the days when there are dark clouds there is rain, so you form a generalization which is used to predict. Whenever there are dark clouds, you predict rain. Okay, clear? Okay, great. Let's now move to the next choice. Hardly anyone chose C, so I'm not going to dwell on this. Okay, we can't say that scientific models are completely useless. Okay, this is an extreme answer choice. Definitely it's incorrect, because earlier we were saying that scientific models, I mean deductions, were used to explain human characteristics, so there must have been some use of it. We don't know, we cannot conclude anything whether alterations are needed or not. Nothing is given in the passage, so completely out of scope. 14% of you marked E as a correct choice, guys. So let's see. We are basically saying scientific models are foolproof. Generalization means scientific models have no errors. Can we say this based on the passage? Can we say this? We cannot say this. Nothing is given about that. This is beyond the scope of the passage, guys, and therefore it is incorrect. Okay. All right. So now that we are still fresh with the understanding of this passage, here is the second question on this. I'm going to give you exactly 1 minute to answer this. Go ahead, guys. Let me bring up the poll. Okay, guys, I'm going to end the poll. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Now, okay, so 50% of you have marked A, 35% of you have marked B, 7% each for C and E, and none for D. Now, tell me, guys, so we have majority of you, 50% of you with A and 35% of you with B, and the remaining are divided over C and E. Let me ask you a question, guys. So, how many of y'all kind of um, look at certain words in the answer choice and you give a lot of focus on those words? And be honest, how many of y'all focus a lot on, words, just words, some words in the answer choice instead of focusing on the entire sentence? You focus only more on some words instead of the entire sentence, and I'm sure you do this because that's what the results tell me. Aruna, don't be sorry, it's not. Yes, Madhukar, those are the two confusing choices. So when you are confused between choices, okay, now let's discuss this. A lot of you earlier said that you're confused between two close choices. So, okay, so 77% of you are, 70% of you are saying yes, and 30% of you are saying no. Okay, all right. Here's another question for you. How many of y'all were confused between A and B? Just so that we can talk about the process. So a lot of you focus, guys, on single words, and that is the problem. One word, these are traps. These are word traps that GMAT creates. Okay, and you fall in those traps. So I'm going to talk about that. Please never focus on single words. Never, never, never. Okay, focus on the entirety, the meaning. All right, let me see. So my question was, were you confused between A and B? Okay, it seems a lot of you were. Okay, about 70% of you were confused between A and B. So we are going to discuss, while discussing A and B, okay, that if you are caught between a situation like this, what should you do? Okay, so going back to our discussion, just hold on to your questions for the moment. We have been asked about the problem of induction. So clearly we can do a quick pre-thinking here, and this pre-thinking should not take more than about 10 seconds. So we quickly recall what we read about the second paragraph. The problem of induction was you could not observe every piece of data, and you had to kind of use generalization to fill the gap. Okay, so basically the problem with induction is you have to use generalization, which is nothing else but deduction. So the problem with induction is you are kind of having to fall back on deduction mostly. Okay, let's look at the answer choices. A. A says the problem with induction. So my question is problem with, I always read the question with my answer choice, kind of. It gives me clarity. Problem with induction is that induction fails. Does induction fail in the observation? So here are the two things. Does it fail in observation of individual cases, or are we saying it cannot observe all cases but is successful in some? Which one are we saying, guys? So let this be A, let this be B. What are we saying? Come on, I'll put up a poll. Give me a moment. Just give me a moment. Right. Wait. I'll just put up a poll. Yeah. Okay. What does the passage say? Does it say that it fails in observing individual cases? Where is it written? 12% of you have marked yes, A. See the passage. It says that the problem is it cannot observe all the data. Impossibility of observing every case. Does it mean that the cases that it can observe, it fails in those cases? Yes. Does it mean it fails in those cases? That's a very subtle difference here. Does it fail in the cases it observes? It fails in observing all cases, but it does not fail in observing cases. That's the difference, guys. Okay? Is it clear? You're welcome, Arnav. Arnav says he observed this point. Very good, Arnav. If you did that, and that is why I was telling you that you were right probably in choosing the choice that you did choose. Okay? You have to be very careful, guys. I think you guys just saw the word fail. You saw the word advantage in choice B, and you thought, okay, we're talking about a problem. We're not talking about advantage, so just rule it out. This happens to all of us. Let's not be embarrassed about it, but it happens. And the lesson to be learned here is, please do not focus on single words. Always go for the entire sentence. Neither should you reject because of one word, nor should you accept because of one word. Yes, Ravi, it was a big trap. And these are very important learnings, something that we do without even thinking about it, without being conscious about it. And imagine doing this for almost all questions. You can just imagine what will happen. So clearly here, there is a distortion. This is what we call a classic case of distortion. The fail is an extreme word. Induction fails in its specific observation is a distortion of the idea that it is not possible to make observation about each case. And therefore, this choice is incorrect. Let's move to B. I'm sure, as I was saying, that you saw the word advantage and you just thought, okay, you kind of, the moment you saw this word, you formed a bias in your mind. And after that, when you were, reading this sentence, I'm sorry for the spelling, guys. After that, when you were reading this sentence, you didn't really give it much of your attention, I think. Once you formed a negative, let's say, thought over here about this choice, you were like, okay, it's talking about advantage. So you didn't even read the rest of the choice very carefully. But what does it say? Its advantage is its basis, which are the specific observation of individual cases. Yes, this is the advantage, yes. But, okay, it too means induction too has to resort to generalization. This is the main point of your sentence. Okay, and therefore choice B is in line with the pre-thinking. So guys, do not have a really good understanding of the passage. Then only you will be able to. So if you're reading your passage very quickly, you can never have the kind of understanding that is required to rule out choice A. You will, most of you did choose choice A, and that's a trap you will fall in. Is this clear, guys? Good, Arsh. Very good reasoning. Speculation is not generalization, so ruled out option A. So guys, is this clear to all of you? Let me reset the poll. Clear to you why B is incorrect? A lot of you chose B. Why A is incorrect and B is correct. A lot of you chose great. 100% on that. Now guys, I'm going to bring up a new passage. I'm going to upload a PDF which you can download, and then we are going to solve that passage together. Let me just quickly run you through C and E. It cannot draw up predictive models. Now, cannot draw up is incorrect. It does draw up predictive models even if it cannot study each case. This unless and until is too harsh. Does the passage say that predictive models can only be drawn by studying all the cases? No. So the problem of induction is not that it cannot draw predictive models. It can. It fills in the gaps by generalizations, and that is the problem. Therefore, this is kind of almost the opposite of what is given in the passage. In the passage, it's given that it can draw predictive models by filling in the gaps. This choice says it cannot draw up the predictive models unless and until it has studied all the individual cases. So this is the part which is pretty incorrect. D, nobody chose. I'm not going to go into this. Okay. Um, are all built on the basis of imprecise observations. E, it is ultimately used for making general predictions. This is the function of the process of deduction. It has got nothing to do with induction in the sense. This is the, so induction is ultimately used for making general predictions, you are saying, is the function. That's not the disadvantage. The disadvantage is it has to fall back on generalization. And therefore, there's a distortion in choice E also. So guys, your main concern is time, right? Now, think about it. Right now, what you're doing is you are probably quickly reading the passage in some 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes. Then you go to the question and then you come back to the passage time and time again. Ultimately, I'm sure you're investing about 5 to 6 or even more in the passage without realizing it and getting the answers incorrect. So by this involved and evolved method, you do give a little more time to reading the passage. Let's say you give it, instead of 3 to 4 minutes, you give it about 5.5 to 6 minutes. But when you're solving the questions, the elimination is so easy, okay? And you are so confident, the accuracy is high. So initially, this process of involved and evolved reading may seem time consuming, but with practice, this does become second nature. Trust me on this, guys. You are able to map the passage, you're able to understand the flow of ideas, you're able to derive the author's point of view. What more do you want? Okay, guys. So with that note, I'm uploading a passage, guys. I'm sharing a passage, a PDF of a passage. I want you to download it and answer those 3 questions. I'm going to give you exactly about, so because I want you to know, I want you to follow the process of um, involved and evolved reading. Please, guys, the whole purpose of this webinar is for you to realize it works. So I want all of you to use that method to the best of your abilities. Okay. So are you guys able to download the PDF? Are you able to download the PDF, guys? Are you able to download the PDF? Okay, great. Your time starts now, guys. Get started. So what you need to do is you just write the answers somewhere on a sheet of paper or something. I'm going to bring up the polls one by one once you're done, and you can put your answers at that point of time. You don't have to put the answers in the chat box, okay? So start. So Arunav and Ryan, are you able to download it? Can you see? Just go down to the file section. Ryan and Arunav, can you download it now? Samyak, just go down to the, so Ryan, just move down to the panel of that where you have that chat and everything written, na? Chat and polls and all that. Just move down, you'll see the one place where the word files is written. And once you click on that, you'll find there's a PDF being shared. Just download it. Okay, I see you guys have got it. Great. So carry on. Okay, you have just 1 minute. So just wrap up your passage and get your answers ready. I'm going to bring up the polls shortly. Okay, guys, are you done with the passage? You can answer me in the chat boxes. Or do you want more time? Since we're trying out a new method, you might want more time. So I'm okay with that. Yes, if you need any time, just let me know in the chat boxes quickly. Otherwise, I'm going to bring up the polls. Do we need time or are we good? Okay, it seems everybody's busy answering. I haven't got a single answer to my question. Do you need more time, guys? Okay, it seems everybody's. I'll give you 1 more minute. Okay, Varika, great. So I think so. Some of you are done, and some of you would like a little more time. So I'm going to give you a minute more. Go ahead. As I said, it's a new method, and you would need more time. Okay. Okay, guys. I think so. I think I've given ample time to all of you. So Fatima was asking me a very interesting question. Ideally, how long should we spend on this passage? So see, Fatima, I've already answered you, but for everybody, the idea is if you are skilled in involved and evolved reading, and you're tackling this passage, max you would need is about 7.5 minutes for 3 questions. Okay, and the point is you would get all three of them correct. That's the idea. You bring yourself to that kind of skill level. Okay, so each of you can today check how much time it took you, and normally also if you would do this passage, how long it would take, and maybe it'll take you about 6 minutes, and then you still get those 3 questions wrong. That wouldn't really help you. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to bring up the polls we'll discuss one question at a time. So here is the poll for the first question, guys. This is for the first question. This is for the first question, guys. So let me see. Okay, I'm just going to quickly count till 10. So 10, I don't think 10 will be required because most of you would have the answers ready with you. So 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay. So, all right, I'm just going to keep noting down the distribution. So here, for this question, it's a fight between C and E, okay? 55% of you have opted for C, and then you have 44% who have opted for E, and not for none of the other choices. Okay, let me reset the poll for the second question. Here it is. Shashank, Shashank and Arnav? Okay, Shashank, I've got your answer. And Arnav, did you get to mark in the poll? So there's the poll, guys, for the second question. This is for the second question. I repeat, this poll is for the second question. I'm going to count up to 10. 10, 9. So, Arnav, is this about the first poll? Okay, Arnav, I'll include you in that answer choice. And I'll also include Shashank. This is for the first question, I believe. The second question poll is still on. Okay, so 5, 4, 3, 2. Poll, Arnav, can you see the polls now? Because it's published. The others are putting in the polls. So can you see the poll now, Arnav? Yes, Arnav? Can you see the poll? Okay. I don't know, Arnav, why you cannot see the poll, because the others are definitely able to see the poll and they're marking the answers also. Okay. So I'm going to note down your answer for this. Ronak says, in my opinion, question 1B seems to be an extreme answer. Oh, well, we'll see about that. We're going to discuss that. Okay, so Navni, acha, I guess so. So maybe Arnav, you have not selected polls when you are checking. I mean, you're still clicked on the file section. Okay, all right. I think Madhukar is already given that message. Great, guys. So I'm just going to quickly end this poll. All right, let me see. 47% of you have gone with B. C, about 17%. D, we have 23%, and E, we have 11%. And I remember, Arunav, you wanted to go for C, so I'm going to include you in that. Let me bring up the poll for the third question, guys. Here it is. Go ahead, mark your answers. That's 47%, Madhukar, for question 2. Okay, I'm going to go do a countdown of 10. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, let me see. You're welcome, Madhukar. Okay, I'm going to end the poll, guys. So here it goes. All right, so 3, I have 26% for A, and then I've got a 6% for B. I've got a 13% for C. I've got a 6% for D, and I've got a hefty 46% for E. I don't remember what the correct answer is. So let's see. Okay, guys, I'm going to quickly go through the summary of each paragraph. Okay. For example, if you look at this paragraph, primarily there are, so you have one sentence that starts from here to here. Then you have another sentence which starts from here till here. And then you have one long sentence, which is this, in which you have a list of all the social and cultural changes, this whole thing. This you can like quickly read, but quickly read. So if you're reading this paragraph, okay, you'll divide this and you'll read primarily defined by popular press. Okay, what is defined by press? The new woman. Okay, so defined by press, I kind of blank out the adjectives. New woman represented what? Contemporary modern understanding of femininity. So this new woman was all about the modern understanding of being a woman. Okay, and it was all about youth, visibility, mobility. That means women were able to move about, greater freedom, independence. Okay, so first sentence talks about what new woman represented. Okay, next, while the exact origins are still debated, exchange between certain writers brought the phrase. So basically, it was an exchange between writers, okay, which brought the. So that means this sentence, if you see, is simply a build up on how the new woman came to be used, the term. The new woman emerged out of social and cultural changes in the early 20th century. And then you've given a list of these changes. Please, guys, a lot of you make the mistake of just not reading the information given within those dashes. Never do that. Okay. You can choose to read it quickly if it is a list like this, and you should read it carefully if it's not a list, because it could have I have come across OG questions where it has a really direct bearing on a question. Okay, so the new woman emerged out of social and cultural changes, and as such offered, you should ask what offered a way of understanding. It's the new woman. The new woman offered a way not only to understand new one's visibility and presence, but also to define a modern American identity. So what we have, a summary from this paragraph, is the term new woman, what it represented. Okay, uh, many social and cultural changes took place that shaped the identity of the new woman, and new woman reflected the changes in the identity of the modern American woman. So basically, more and less, the summary of the first para is what new woman was all about. Okay, what this term new woman represented. That's the single line summary. If you look at the second paragraph, uh, we are talking about how new woman was often compared with the true woman. Okay, and what was true woman? True woman was an understanding of femininity. So new woman was also an understanding of femininity, if you relate back to the passage in the previous sentence. And the true woman was also an understanding of femininity. So what was the difference? If it was often positioned in opposition, often placed, often compared to true woman, true woman was an essential timeless concept. That means it was a very old concept. It emphasized domesticity and submissiveness. Remember, relate back to the previous paragraph. Newman reflected all about, emphasized youth, mobility, greater independence. Here we are talking about submissiveness. Over there, we are talking about demand for, sorry, we are talking about more visibility in the public. Here we are talking about domesticity. Okay, so the contrast. A contrast is being drawn up between the true woman and the Victorian woman. Okay. However, so here we note the transition word. We have a change of idea. Always pay attention to such ideas. The new woman did not express a unified message regarding women's changing roles. So, new woman was not about one role. Okay, as those varied. Now this those refers to what? Ask yourself. Roles. As the roles varied, the roles changed, depended, differed by a lot of things, a lot of factors: religion, region, class, politics, etc., etc. And then if you see, they are giving you the example. New one could be lots of things. Okay, and then we said that these images and meanings overlapped. Okay, that means she could be she could have two things. I mean, allowing the women to adopt some characteristics while renouncing others. So what we are saying is the true woman stressed on the image of domesticity. New woman was not any single image. The image varied depending on multiple factors. Okay. So in short, new woman was very different from Victorian woman, but new woman was not any one type. Okay. Okay. The new woman depended, the term new woman, the role played by the new woman could be very, very different at different times. Okay. She could adopt some characteristics from a particular role and another from some other role. All right, so new woman had this multi-tiered image is what we can understand. Third paragraph, if you see, mostly it's about how different aspects of the new woman dominated different periods. For example, the Egyptian girl, whatever she is, dominated a certain period. Then the suffragist dominated another period, and the political new woman dominated, some other period. In 1920s, the flapper was dominating. So basically, the first sentence is telling you that different images of the new woman dominated different periods. Moreover, class and race factored into one's ability to adopt and shape the meaning of these different images. So that means how a new woman adopted herself depended on the class she belonged to and the race she was from. And finally, the final word is the new woman represented not a single image, but spectrum. That means a range of expressions and behaviors. Okay? New woman did not mean just a one type, one image, one stereotype. Every woman could shape her own version. So you could have vast different versions of new woman depending on what interest you wanted to promote, what you had at your disposal. So this paragraph simply iterates that new woman is not a single image. The image differed depending on various factors. Okay, great. With that understanding, let us now move to the first question. Any questions you have, guys, so far on the passage? I kind of went through it a little quickly because we don't have time, but I'm sure you would have broken the sentences and read all of them. I bet you did, right? So guys, any questions on the passage? Anything you want to know, anything you did not understand? I'll just wait for a few seconds. If I don't have any queries, I'm just going to move to discussing the answer choices. If it is to do with questions, just hold on because I'm going to discuss the questions. Anything about the passage that is you want to know? Okay, I'm assuming there's nothing you really want to know there. All right. I have a question. You're welcome, Fatima. Thank you. Also, let's move to the term new woman primarily served to know. Part of answering the question is understanding the question stem carefully, correctly, precisely. So they're asking you, what was the purpose of the term new woman? And quickly, if you try to pre-think, you will recall that the new woman emerged out of social and cultural changes and offered a way to understand women's new visibility. So the term new woman did these two things. That's the main function of the term new woman. Offered a way to understand women's new visibility, define modern American identity at a time of unsettling change. These are the two factors that the term new woman really, served to represent. Clear? So with that understanding, let's move to the choices. Choice A. Define how the modern American woman presented herself in the public domain. Now, this is a distortion. Nobody chose this. I'm not going to dwell on this much. Good choice. Not. This is very, very, very limited in scope. Again, no one chose choice B. So I'm again not going to kind of, new woman did not dictate the social cultural changes. She was born out of it. So this is also not correct. Okay. Those of you marked B, I think you were not getting the poll or something. B is not correct because the term new woman served to indicate the emergence of a new type of American woman. Well, the new type is not the point. It's more about new image. And who defined, okay, but did not dictate the social and cultural changes. She was born, she emerged out of the changes. She did not cause the changes. So this is the correct answer. And I'm so happy to say that 55% of you got this right. Guys, did involved and evolved reading help you in getting this right? Did involved and evolved reading help you in getting this right? Did it make a difference to your way of reading if you were following involved and evolved reading? Great. If you develop this little by little, you'll really see. I've deliberately chosen a passage of just 700 level, okay? But imagine tackling even more difficult passages with the help of this. So great. I have got a lot of good responses from people and 100% on that, guys. Let's move on with our understanding. So the closest was E, 44% of you choosing that. Let's go to E. If you recall, okay, the term new woman was defined by the press as emphasizing youthfulness. Okay, so this was how the press defined new woman, but this is not what the term new woman really did. That is given in the second half of the passage, and therefore this choice is not quite correct. It is limited in scope. It does not talk about how the term new woman offered to define the identity of the modern American woman. This just talks about youthfulness, mobility, independence. It doesn't talk about the entire identity, and therefore E is very close. When you are caught between two such choices, guys, and listen to this carefully, whenever you face two very close choices, don't rush back to the passage. First, identify what is the difference between the two choices. So B talks about defining the modern American identity. B talks about how the term kind of encaptured the image of the modern American woman. This choice also talks about modern American woman, but it doesn't talk about American identity. Okay, it talks about emphasizing youthfulness. So, is the main motive of the term new woman to emphasize on something or to offer a new understanding? Go back to the passage and identify what is the difference, which difference is supported by the passage, and voila, you have the correct answer. That is C. You should have this approach for eliminating close answer choices, guys. This will work. I promise you. Okay, clear? How to identify the difference between close answer choices? Are you clear? So Saksham, choice C is a direct takeoff. I'll show you. I'll show you. Just give me a moment. Let me go back to C. Here is C. If you look at C, what does C say? Define the term new woman primarily served to define the changes in the public image of the modern American woman, how she changed, and define the modern American identity in the context of changing society. Now, if you revert to the original passage, guys, I'm just going to quickly go back. Look at the portion marked in red. Offered a way to understand woman's new visibility and presence in public. So this matches with the first half of the answer choice C. Define modern American identity in a period of unsettling change matches with the second half of choice C. And therefore, choice C is correct. There is choice C for you once again. You want to view it. Here, yes, Mithul, Saksham. I'll just go to E in a moment, but is C clear to all of you? Okay, great. So let me go to E. Now, none of you, 44% of you marked E. See, this was used right at the beginning, okay? If I again take you back, and because maybe you were not relating it, the new woman emerged. If I go back to the passage, sorry, there is the first paragraph. Yeah, primarily defined by popular press the new woman represented modern understanding. This modern understanding emphasized youth, visibility, mobility, greater independence. Yes. So this is what the term new woman represented. But in what way, or the question is, in what way did the term new woman, what did it serve as? The question is, what did it serve as? Okay, it offered. Here is the term offered, which goes with served as. It served as a way to understand the new visibility that the modern woman attained. Okay, so I would say that choice E is not really comprehensive. It's what we call limited in scope. And one of the ways a close answer choice is prepared is the entire points are not captured in one choice, and therefore people land up choosing the choice by looking only at half of it. Okay, great. Let's move to the next question. Here is question 2. Which of the following can be correctly inferred from the passage? Now, over here, I had varied answers, guys. So it's an open question. You can't really pre-think. You have to straight away go to the choice. A suffragist could never dress like a flapper. Now, per the passage, okay, the new one could be anything. She could be a suffragist. What is a suffragist? An activist for this or this. She could be a flapper, which is a modern socialite. She could be a fashionable gypsum girl. She could be an actress, farm, factory laborer, and so on. Okay. And at the end, we're given that women adopted some characteristic from one and renounced some of the other. So the characteristics, the images overlap. So we cannot say that suffragists could never dress like a flapper. So A is out. Good. B. B is the correct answer, guys. 47% of you chose it, and I'm sure the reading, the involved and evolved reading really helped you. An African American woman simply means we are talking about race here, and we're talking about race here. Could be very different from the American one, even if both were contemporaries, means of the same time. That means we are saying race could be a differentiating factor in the different images. Look at the portions in bold. Race, time. Race factored into one's ability to adopt and shape, okay, of different images. That means an African American woman could have her own version of New Woman, and an American one could have her own version of New Woman. A lot of you did not mark this choice, guys. Is it clear? Let me just bring up a poll for that. Are all of you all clear with why B is correct? Are all of you all clear with why B is correct? Great. So please realize for each of yourselves why you're going wrong, where you're going wrong. I understand you still have to perfect the skill of involved and evolved reading. But the more you try it out, the more you will be able to notice these small differences. Remember, a lot of you said that it was very difficult to identify inferential questions, correct answer choices on those. That's because you're not reading carefully. You're not relating back. You're not reading in an involved and evolved manner. I cannot, emphasize enough on this. So you mean the passage Madhukar? As I said, it was a 700 level passage Madhukar. Okay, the read was not easy, and the questions were also not very easy, given that the choices are pretty close. All right, it's a GMAT whiz question. So let's move on to the next choice. So B was correct. 17% of you chose C. It was always the social and political. Now, the term always was not mentioned anywhere in the passage. Okay. The social and political changes, or social and cultural changes actually mentioned, defined the new woman of a particular period, but we can't say always. This is not really inferable, and therefore it's incorrect. Okay. That was for C. 23% of you termed. Now, I want you to read this portion. Recall the portion. You have your PDFs with you. The passage says the origins are debated. When you say debated, it means at least there must be two known origins, at least two, and there's a debate as to which one is the right origin. We cannot say that it is unknown. That's a distortion. And these kind of distortions, you've got to be careful, guys. Is it clear? 23% of you chose this. Okay, Madhukar. So Madhukar says he's surprised that he answered two questions correctly. So Madhukar, were you using or trying to use involved and evolved reading? Were you trying to use it? And my poll is those of you who chose D as the correct answer, 23% of you. Are you clear with D? And Madhukar, I would like to know whether it helped you. Madhukar says yes, yes, yes. Okay, Madhukar, sorry for asking you so many times, but I'm kind of excited. I'm very, very pro this method. It is something that I have developed after a lot of research. This is unique. Nobody actually teaches involved and evolved reading. Okay, so let's move to the last choice. 11% of you chose E. It was not coined by writers. The passage says that two writers were found mentioning this term, and it came into being used at that point. But whether they coined it, and we are given right at the beginning that defined by popular press. We are not saying popularized by the press. So lots of distortions there, and that's not correct. Let's move to the last question. Which of the following differences can be drawn? Guys, I'll be sharing the PDF of this webinar with you once I finish this question. So hold on, be with us, and you can ask your questions at that point of time. Which of the following differences can be drawn between the Victorian true woman and the new woman? So some of the differences that we can quickly remember is like, true woman was a traditional concept of the woman. These are some of the things. She was a traditional concept: domesticity, meekness, submissiveness. Newman was not a single image. Okay, and we can also remember New Woman was more about more independence. Right at the beginning, they are given she was more demanding and independent. Okay, so all in all, these are the various contrasts that we have to True Woman and New Woman. And I again have a lot of different answer choices here, but take a moment to understand. The True Woman was a timeless concept. That means it was a very traditional concept. Okay, it had been there for a long time. New Woman belonged to the modern American identity. It was definitely new, right? We are given the date of the phrase coming into use. That's 18 something. So clearly, the true woman is a new concept, and the true woman is an old concept, and the new woman is a new concept, obviously. And then it's all about. We are not saying that the new woman was not domestic, but it's about not being only domestic. She was of different. She had different images. So with that understanding, let's look at choice A. 26% of you marked A. Was she the exact opposite, guys? It's the if you remember the passage, it says that the new one was often juxtapositioned. Okay, that is often positioned in opposition. That does not mean she was the exact opposite. It means she was often compared, and therefore this choice is incorrect. A lot of you marked this. Can you see where you went wrong? Ryan, go back to the first passage, first paragraph. Refer to the first paragraph, the first three sentences, the first three lines. Okay? And there you will get the word greater independence, greater demanding, greater independence. Okay? So for those of you who marked A, I'm just going to reset the poll. Are you clear why A is incorrect, guys? Are you clear why A is incorrect? Are all of you clear why A is incorrect? Great. Okay, I've got 100% on that. So we have all of you chose some of the answers or the other. So then I have 6% of you who chose B. The new woman lacked. Now, nowhere we are talking about what the new woman lacked. And therefore, we can't really infer anything of that sort. Okay. The true woman did have timeless, is identified with timeless femininity. The true woman is definitely identified with traditional domesticity. Okay. But can we say that the new woman was not feminine? The new woman was not a house worker. Remember, in the second paragraph, we are given the new woman could be a house worker. Okay, so B is also out. C, this is correct. The true woman was a traditional homemaker. Content to obey. Remember, submissiveness. Okay. Whereas the new woman was a more demanding and public feature. Okay. So the point here is comparison. All right. If you refer to the first few lines of the first para and the first few lines of the second para, you can draw the difference. If the new woman demanded more greater independence, therefore clearly she was demanding. Okay, she was more of a public creature, whereas true one was more about domesticity. So definitely C would have been worth holding on to. Just 13% of you marked C as the correct answer. Yes, can you see why C is the correct answer, guys? We can definitely, I'll show you how to rule out D and E, but then these are very close choices, guys, especially E. There is a small distortion in E, which I believe some of you did notice. So is C clear? C lays out all the differences here. You cannot really find a reason to eliminate. So some of you have answered no. If you have any queries related to C, please ask. So Ryan did ask about more demanding. Let me just take you back to the passage for a moment. Hold on a second. I'm going to refer to the. Sorry for this trouble, guys. If you look at the first para, okay, here, one that emphasized youth, visibility, and mobility, as well as, so the modern understanding was one that was a demand for greater freedom. Therefore, we can say if the new woman was about a demand for greater freedom and independence, we can infer that the new woman was more demanding. She wanted greater freedom and she wanted greater independence. Clear on this? If you have any other queries, so Ryan, it isn't explicit. That's the whole point of involved and evolved reading. It isn't explicit. Okay. Public creature, it's given at the beginning, Shashank. So creature in the context of the passage can only refer to the new woman, right? See, the words used in the choices will never be the same. They will have different connotations. That's the point. They're trying to check whether you have that range of understanding of the language. Okay, so I'm going to quickly move back. And let me just quickly go to the. So that's choice C for you guys. Okay. Give me a moment. We are almost there. Yeah. Okay. So we've ruled out A, we've ruled out B, we've selected C, and we are now going to go to D. All clear, guys? Okay, I see all is clear. Okay. D, the true woman was the true embodiment of femininity. All right. And subordination, whereas the new woman, Now, this is an exaggeration. She was not a dominating rebel. All we are given is she was more of a public preacher. She demanded more independence. That does not mean she was a dominating rebel. That is why D is incorrect. E. Now, here is E. See I want you guys to notice the small difference. The passage says the new woman could adopt any image she wanted. Okay. She could be a fashionable person. At the same time, she could be a house worker. Understand? Okay. The difference between her and the true woman is not that the true woman could play that the new woman could play only one role at a time and the former could play multiple roles. It's not about multiple roles, it's about multiple images. The roles varied according to different factors, but nowhere does the passage say that she played multiple roles at the same time. She could adopt any characteristic belonging to any role. Yes, guys, can you see this? I want you guys to take a good, long, hard look at this. And after that, answer the poll. Are you clear why E is incorrect? First, take a long, hard look at this slide, guys. See what it says. The Newman was about multiple images, not multiple roles at the same time. And this is the kind of differentiation you have to make. Let's say I'm sure you might have been confused between C and E. So between C and E, what is the difference? That's the difference. Here it talks about playing multiple roles at the same time. What does the passage say? Multiple images, okay, but not multiple roles. All right. So I guess with that, all is clear. I'm just quickly going to run you through how we teach you reading and comprehension, how we teach you involved and evolved reading, guys. We have a almost more than a 10-hour skill builder. Now, those of you who believe that you are not avid readers by habit, this is that one-stop place where you can really build good reading habits without having read for years. We dedicate a huge section teaching you how to understand the transition words, how to make paragraph summaries, how to read. Literally, we tell you if you don't understand a word, what to do. We tell you that in the main point questions, I'll just show you that in the main point questions, if you have to differentiate between words like evaluate and discuss and assess and examine and trace and outline, how to do that, we teach you that. We have a whole dedicated unit to that. All right. Then so the model unit 1 is all about how to read literally. Second unit is about how to derive the main point and eliminate the answer choices. What are the traps? How to recognize those traps? How to deal with those traps? You've seen a small sample today, guys, as to how to differentiate between two choices and arrive at the correct answer choice. In this case, we actually teach you that step by step. And finally, we teach you, we kind of discuss different kinds of questions and what are the different kinds of answer traps in those questions and how to deal with those separate questions. Okay, that's our entire RC module divided into 3 units. The first dedicated to skill building, the second about the main point, and the third about the different questions. You have any questions that you want to ask related to the course or anything, you can ask now, or you can get in touch with us at these numbers. And so any questions?